Hello and welcome to Browsing the Bible. I'm Scott Burgess. Today we are continuing our study of the sanctuary in the sea, a look at the book of Jonah. So far we have established that there are two keys to understanding the book of Jonah. One is that it deals with God's sanctuary, and second is what he does in the sanctuary, namely judgment. Having established those two keys in previous presentations, we are now ready to forge ahead. Today we look at chapter 2, which is the story of Jonah in the belly of the great fish. Jonah chapter 2 is set up like a chiasm. That means that the beginning and the end of the story match, and successive pieces keep matching until we reach the climax there in the middle. What does that look like here in the book of Jonah? Well, here it is. The beginning and the end look like this. In verse 17 of chapter 1, the Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow up Jonah. And then in chapter 2, verse 10, the Lord spake unto the fish, and it vomited out Jonah upon the dry land. And so we see that the story begins and ends with mention of the fish. Now, what would you do if you were swallowed by a great fish? No doubt you would do exactly what Jonah did, and that is to pray earnestly unto the Lord. And when he prays unto the Lord, that too is another allusion to God in his heavenly sanctuary or temple, because it says in Psalm 141, verse 2, that our prayer ascends like incense before him. The altar of incense is in his temple. Now, at this point, Jonah has been swallowed by the fish. What does it mean to be swallowed? Well, you might say that's silly. It means to be swallowed. However, swallowing in the Bible is used to mean something very specific here. There's a greater significance to it. And so let's take a look at that. Right here, in Exodus 15, verse 12, when Pharaoh and his armies pursued the Israelites as they fled from Egypt, God took charge of events, and the earth swallowed Pharaoh and his armies, which is to say that they died. They drowned in the sea. Again, in the book of Numbers, chapter 16, we meet with the story of Korah and his rebellion. There were those who did not like Moses. They were envious of him, and God would have no part of that. And so, since they persisted in their rebellion, he did a new work. The earth opened up, the earth swallowed Korah and those who were associated with him, and they died. And so what we find out is that to swallow in the Bible means to die, or to be swallowed means to die. And sure enough, Jonah confirms that. In chapter 2, verse 2, he thinks he's as good as dead. He says, "Out of the belly of the grave cried I." Now, we said that the story of Jonah chapter 2 is shaped like a chiasm. As we near the center, our attention is focused right on that heavenly sanctuary. Let's see it. In verses 4 and 7, we have mention of the holy temple. "Then I said, I am cast out of your sight, yet I will look again toward thy holy temple." God is getting hold of his runaway prophet here. Jonah was his chosen agent, and yet Jonah was rebellious. He did not want to carry out God's commission. And so God had to bring him just about to the point of death to get hold of him. And in his extremity, Jonah did the right thing. He turned his eyes unto Jesus, and he was restored to favor. And notice here, he acknowledges that my prayer came in unto thee into thy holy temple. So right here, just as we're nearing the climax of chapter 2, the focus is on God and his holy temple. And what does God do in that holy temple? Well, this is the beautiful part. It's not just some arbitrary doctrine in the Bible. The reason the temple, the sanctuary, is so important is because it is how God accomplishes salvation in our life through Jesus. Notice what it says here. In chapter 2, verse 5, the very heart of the chapter, Jonah says, "The waters compassed me about, threatening my very life." But then in the very next verse, just as he knows he's on the point of death, he says, "Yet hast thou brought up my life from corruption, O Lord my God." He's gone from just about ready to lose his life to saying, "You have saved my life. You've brought it up from corruption," which is a reference to the grave where our bodies decompose. He says, "You have restored me. You have saved me." At this point, it's very helpful to look at the comparisons between Jonah and Jesus as the Son of Man. Notice here, we've already established that Jonah was offered as a sin offering for the Day of Atonement when he was cast into the sea by the sailors. Jesus is the one who became sin for us. He never sinned himself, of course, but he voluntarily became sin for us and died for us to pay the wages of sin. Jonah spent 3 days in the belly of the fish. Jesus spent 3 days in the tomb. Jonah says God brought up his life from corruption. The Bible says that Jesus, as the Son of Man, did not see corruption as he lay in the tomb those 3 days. Jesus referred to the story of Jonah in the belly of the fish as the sign of the Son of Man, referring to how he himself would die, spend 3 days, and then resurrect. And then Jesus is the Son of Man. Jonah was that sacrifice, which is one aspect of atonement. Jesus, of course, is the true sacrifice for us all. However, there is also the aspect of judgment that is the second phase of atonement, which is hugely important in the book of Jonah. And Jesus, as the Son of Man, we read in Daniel chapter 7. Daniel chapter 7, verses 9 through 14. In 9 and 10, we see that the judgment sits, the judgment begins, and the Ancient of Days, God the Father, is presiding over it. Then you come to verses 13 and 14, and we see that Jesus, as the Son of Man, is brought before the Ancient of Days as the judgment commences. So there's a lot of parallels there. So I hope that this has been a tremendous blessing as we have now explored the sanctuary and the theme of judgment in the book of Jonah. We're seeing how it's intimately tied. It's typifying the work of Jesus. Please come again as we continue to browse the Bible and continue our exploration of the book of Jonah. God bless you, and may you continue to browse the Bible. Bye-bye. If you were blessed by this presentation, please give a thumbs up, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Thank you. Are you interested in end-time prophecy? Please see my commentary on the book of Daniel entitled The Stand. This highlights how Jesus enables his people to stand perfectly faithful to him in the end-time judgment. My other book, The Wedding, is my commentary on the book of Revelation. It highlights Jesus' beautiful plan to marry his faithful bride for all of eternity. Please go to the links in the comments below, and you can preview these books on Amazon or directly from the publisher Teach Services. Thank you.